welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Katie, I'm a mixed media artist, and today's video is going to be quite a simple one as I talk through my top 5 reference books. Ooh, it's a heavy stack, so I've got them all here beside me. But I wanted to talk about references because I use them a lot in my work, and I prefer to use books for that. I love the tactile nature of flipping through and finding inspiration that way, because sometimes it's easier doing it like that rather than knowing what you're going to draw and trying to find a reference online. So there are some copyright-free image sites I really like to use, and I talk about them a lot on my channel. The main one I use is Pexels, and I also used to use PicRepo, although that's kind of changed into a desktop background sort of site. But those are great resources if you are looking for stock images and also if you know what you're going to draw, and also high-res photos. But I have quite an extensive collection of reference books now because I just really love having them in the studio, and I'm not necessarily looking at things to draw. Sometimes I'll just look through them for ideas and also things like composition. So most of my reference books are secondhand. I either get these from secondhand bookshop sites online or from charity shops. Those are a really great place to look for reference books because there's usually a lot of them. And I generally pay between £2 and £3 for each of these books. And I've also got a lot of my books from boot sales as well. So you can pick these up really cheaply, but I will link them all down below. A lot of these I can find on Amazon, so I'll leave a link there. But like I said, sometimes it's worth looking at your local charity shops, and another place is also libraries. Obviously you don't have those for a long time, but you could always take pictures of the pages and then reference them later. So as well as showing you my top 5, I'm also going to be sharing the art that I've created from them. I think this is really useful because sometimes we can look at reference books and not really know how to apply them to our work. So I hope that is helpful showing you some of the sketchbook pages I've created using the books. So first up is the heaviest book in my collection, which is the Natural History book, The Ultimate Visual Guide to Everything on Earth. Now, I get a lot of questions whenever I show this on my Instagram stories or whenever I show it online, and it's just a really great book full of so many different subjects. I got this for my birthday last year, and it's filled with loads of natural world stuff. So there's a lot of animals in here, fungi, plants, minerals, rocks and fossils, loads and loads of different things, including birds and mammals. So it's really filled with lots of information as well as loads of different references. Some of the books I'm going to show you are photos and some of them are illustrations, and this book is completely photos, so you can really stylize them to how you'd like. There's loads of information about each of the things as well, so I find that another really good point about reference books, because sometimes if you're just seeing the photos online, you're not really getting the full picture, and so this is really helpful for not only getting context about what it is, but also sometimes a sense of scale. I've used this a lot in my sketchbook work, so you can see that I reference the fish a lot on my fish spreads, which you can see here, as well as the fungi pages and my butterfly pages. These are all referenced from this book, and one of the really good things I like about this book is there's loads on one page, so you don't have to keep flipping back and forth, and you can just put a double page spread in front of you and draw what you see. So I've had this book for a while and I still haven't made a dent on drawing everything in here, but I love that I can just flip through it and draw something new each time because there is such a wealth of knowledge and references in here. So there are a couple of editions on this one, and I think the American one is published by the Smithsonian, whereas in the UK it's DK Books. But I will, like I said, leave a link down in the description if you're interested. So next up we're going a lot smaller, and this is a colour guide to familiar wildflowers, ferns and grasses. This one is completely falling apart, the spine has completely come away from the cover, so I'm going to show you this the best I can, but it won't be in page order because they've all got jumbled up. But I picked this up really cheaply from a car boot sale, and this is one that I've referenced time and time again. This one is filled with illustrations, so they're not photos, they are already stylised, and I think it's really interesting to use these sort of books to then jump off from for your own illustrations. Sometimes it's helpful to see how someone stylised it and take that and then stylise it some more in the way that you like to create. I think that it adds another abstraction from the photo, so although I know it's not great to copy, especially specific illustration styles, I do think it's a really helpful way to sort of move from a photo to another illustration and then to your own copy. The other thing I really like about this book is it does include the Latin names. I really like to label some of my flowers and wildflower drawings, and so I like to put the name at the top and then the Latin name underneath. And again, it gives you loads of information here, including like the size, as well as specific details about the flower head or the stems or the leaves. You can see some of my references here, so you can see I can really stylize them and use it as a jumping off point for my own illustrations. I really like doing wildflower studies, but you can also incorporate these into like a bigger picture, so rather than doing individual studies, you could put them into a landscape and have them as a foreground element and really merge them into your illustrations that way. So this next book is from a series. This is called The Illustrated Book of Trees, but I've also seen it published as the Oxford Book of Trees. Like I said, it's a series, so I also have the illustrated book of food plants, and that's a really lovely one as well. But there are more in the collection that I'd like to get my hands on if I do see them secondhand. This one I picked up from an Oxfam bookshop for a couple of pounds, and this is just filled with loads of trees. Trees were one of the things I wanted to improve on, so you can see a couple of my studies here, and I used this book to reference those. Again, there are no photos in this book, so they are all illustrated already, but there are a mix of individual trees and also scenery. So like here, for example, you can see the like forests where they grow, as well as like a zoomed out version, and I think that's really nice for adding context and again for referencing in larger illustrations. One of the things I really like about this book is that it includes close-ups, so you can really focus in on the leaves and draw things like the pine cones and the fruits of the tree as well. So it's not just the big tree, it's also all the little elements about it. And I think that's something else that you can't get from one photo as much as you can zoom in. I really like this because it's got it all in one place and you can just keep flicking through the pages and see so many different types. I'm a huge lover of trees, so this book is definitely a fan favourite in my collection. Next up is quite a recent purchase from me. This was from, again, an Oxfam bookshop, and that's Old English Villages. This is by Clay Perry, Anne Gore and Lawrence Fleming. And this one is filled with photos, so no illustrations in this one, but also a lot of information about the villages. When I was looking up this book, I found that it was created using a lot of help from the local WIs, so those are the women institutes of each village. So they really provided a lot of history for this book, and I think that's really nice to have next to the photos. If you've seen my work, you'll know I'm a sucker for a good English landscape, and so this book was absolutely perfect, and I knew as soon as I saw it that it would be a perfect addition to my collection. There's also some urban sort of scenes in here, so there are like some shops, and I think that's really handy as well as having the more rural places to draw. Lots of buildings and houses in this one, so a really nice way to practice the trees from the other book with the buildings in this one. Again, I haven't made a dent in here, but I really like that there's a mix of really inland scenes as well as like coastal views, especially this one of the harbour. So it is a really wide mix, but again, this is just English villages, so I think it would be really interesting to find one with different architecture from different cities around the world as well. Next up we have Birds, an Introduction to General Ornithology. This is by James Fisher and Roger Torrey Peterson. So like a lot of my other reference books, this was published in around the 1980s, and I find that gives a really nice effect to a lot of the pages and the illustrations. It really has that vintage feel. And again, this is filled with illustrations rather than photos. There is quite a lot of text in here explaining about the habitats and the birds, so again I find that really helpful for context. But what I really like about this one is that there's lots of different angles of the birds. I've got quite a few bird books now because I really love to draw them as a subject, but this one really is helpful because it shows the scenes and the settings as well as other things like the feathers and the eggs, and also them in flight, so not just them like perched down, which a lot of references do have online. This one does show them in movement, which I find really helpful for adding a lot of energy to my spreads. This one is filled with colour, and I really love just flipping through it and seeing the birds interacting with flowers and all the different colours on all of the pages. This one is more specific again, like the tree book. This one's for birds, but like I said, I really love drawing them, and this is a really good resource if you are looking at learning more about birds and having a huge range of them to draw from. So those are my top 5 reference books. Like I mentioned, I do have a lot in my collection, so if you'd like to see more, please do let me know down in the comments. I'm always looking for new references, and I do a monthly reference share on my Patreon, so if you want to see scans of any of these books, then I do those monthly on Patreon for the £3 tier. So every month I scan in a bunch of the pages and share the high-res images for my patrons to draw from. Like I said, I also do use online references, so this is just a tiny drop in the ocean when it comes to referencing for your work. But I hope this was helpful and it's given you some ideas if you are looking to expand your own collection. If you have any I haven't mentioned that you personally love, please do let me know and we can collate all of the responses in the comments. So quite a quick video from me today, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week with a new YouTube video. See you later!